When I met my son's fiancée for the first time, she mocked me, saying, "Your dad only finished middle school. Seriously, can you even get a job with such a low qualification?" She laughed loudly. Her father joined in, saying, "I can't believe he's an unemployed high school dropout," and they both belittled me. They even served food only for themselves, excluding me. The fiancée's mother, smiling, said, "I prepare meals only for my family." I had never felt so humiliated during a meet and greet between two families. Frustrated, I decided to get back at them, including my son, and said, "Say whatever you want," before storming out of the restaurant. My name is Stephen Walker. I'm 60 years old and have a 25-year-old son named Michael. Unfortunately, my relationship with Michael is strained, and he never visits me. I've often regretted how I raised him, which led to our current situation. I lost my beloved wife when Michael was still in elementary school. She had been frail since childhood and passed away at the age of 45. At my wife's funeral, I didn't care about the judgmental looks from relatives. I paused, crying like a little kid, while Michael was more composed and said, "Dad, it's sad, but let's say our goodbyes to Mom." My grief only lasted during the funeral. I was running a real estate business that I had inherited from my father. The day after my wife's funeral, I woke up to phone calls from clients. I had loyal clients to take care of and had to raise Michael on my own. I snapped out of my grief with those phone calls and headed to my office. I also took part in school events and PTA meetings, trying to fill the role my wife had played. However, I quickly realized I couldn't juggle work and school events perfectly. I decided to temporarily close my business and handed over my clients to another real estate agency to spend time with Michael. But when I went to his school, Michael glared at me and said, "Dad, I told you not to come." He even complained, "Don't tell anyone you're my dad." Without saying whose parent I was, I just wore a name tag that said Walker during PTA activities. I couldn't understand why my son started giving me the cold shoulder, but it didn't take long to figure it out. His classmates taunted him, saying, "Hey, isn't that your dad? What's he doing at school on a weekday? Does he have nothing better to do?" My mom said that after your mom passed away, your dad became jobless, right? Michael remained silent and looked down. I quickly rushed over and told them, "I'm just taking some time off work. It's like your summer or winter break." However, seizing this opportunity, my son was further ridiculed by his classmates. They mocked him, saying, "Your dad's just pretending to be on break. Your family's poor. I'll share my bread with you." Michael grew more resentful and angry with me, saying, "Darn you, Dad. Talking to me just made me look even worse." As his classmates made fun of him, all I could do was look the other way. I can't remember how many times I cried alone, feeling pathetic. When Michael entered middle school, he started hanging out with delinquents. He slept over at friends' houses and stayed out late at gas station parking lots. Back then, cell phones weren't common, and it was rare for a middle schooler to have one. Michael came home less and less, and I had no idea where he was or what he was doing. All I could do was apologize when the school called about complaints from the nearby gas station. Whenever I went to Michael's school, he and his rowdy friends called me names like good for nothing and bottom of the barrel, throwing empty cans at me. Michael had become more violent, and I was scared to even talk to him, not knowing what he might do. I wish I had handled things better when he was in elementary school, but I had no idea how to communicate with a teenager. Michael skipped school, ran away during classes, and had rock-bottom grades. At a parent-teacher conference, they told me about a private high school where even Michael could get in. I was relieved. I hoped the new environment would help him calm down. Just as I hoped, after starting high school, Michael began to take his classes seriously. He studied hard, scored above average on tests, and even made it to college. But his disdain for me remained. Even after high school, he continued bouncing from one friend's house to another, never stopping by home. When he got into college, he lived alone in a dorm, paid his tuition by working part-time, and lived independently. But he was still cold towards me. Even after he started working, he never came home. Then, out of the blue, when Michael was about 25, he called me and said, "I've got someone I want to marry. Next Sunday at 2 p.m., we're meeting at a fancy restaurant. Be there." He made plans without asking about my availability. When I got mad, he said, "If you can't make it, don't bother," and hung up the phone. I had mixed feelings, but he's my only son, so I went to the restaurant at the time he told me. When I got there, his fiancée's family was already seated. They rudely asked, "Who are you?" I thought, you call me out of the blue and then ask who I am. Even though I was fuming, they said, "No, we didn't call you, and we're as cold as my son." Michael stood there smirking, clearly up to something. I still didn't know if I could trust him. I headed inside the restaurant, expecting to talk about Michael and his partner, Sarah. Instead, I was the center of attention, treated like an intruder. Michael began insulting me, saying, "This guy here dropped out of high school and worked, but after mom passed, he's just been loafing around," while talking to Sarah and her folks. I tried to stop him, saying this wasn't the time or place, but he wouldn't listen. Sarah then bursts out laughing. "For real? Can a person even get hired with just a middle school education?" Her dad added, "Wow, raised by a high school dropout and layabout. But here you are with a college degree and a job at a big company. You took your old man as what not to be, huh?" He praised Michael. I was too tired to argue and was about to say what you want. I'm out of here, when the waiter brought in the food. I had forgotten the food hadn't even arrived yet. I tried to calm down, deciding to eat and then leave. But the food was only for Michael, Sarah, and Sarah's parents. The waiter said, "I'm sorry, we had a reservation for 4, giving me an awkward look." Sarah's mom added, "Yes, that's correct. He's not our family, so don't mind him," with a sweet smile. The waiter, looking uncomfortable, nodded and backed away. Just as I was about to lose it, Sarah's dad cut me off, saying, "We don't want anything to do with some deadbeat high school dropout. Our family and relatives are all bank employees, doctors, working at major companies. You don't belong here. Please leave." That was enough. I said, "It's education and job history all you care about. Aren't you folks a bit off your rockers?" And got up to leave. Sarah's dad responded, "I work at Bank of America, where education and job history really matter for clients' trust. But of course, a layabout like you wouldn't know." As I was leaving, I said, "Oh my, you work at Bank of America, huh? That's quite impressive." They didn't hear me. The next day, I paid a visit to Bank of America, where Sarah's dad works. Being called a deadbeat by my son, his classmates, and his fiancé's family was enough. I must clarify, I'm not actually a deadbeat. After my wife passed away, I temporarily closed down the real estate business I was running. But it was just a temporary closure. I didn't shut it down for good. I switched to online management to prioritize my son's school events and PTA meetings. When I had a physical store, most of my clients were neighbors, but after switching to online management, I could serve customers from all over the country, like people living in small towns an hour's drive from the nearest train station, and even Americans living abroad. I started getting more consultations about renting and buying properties from these folks. Thanks to the internet, I expanded my property portfolio and catered to a broader clientele. Running a real estate business online made things possible that seemed like a dream. Additionally, I was quite active in stocks and investments as a hobby. Currently, I have $50 million deposited in Bank of America, where Sarah's dad works. Upon arriving at the bank, I promptly requested to speak with the branch manager and explained everything that happened the day before. I said, "I was told by one of your employees that this bank operates on trust built on educational background and work history, so I've lost all trust in this bank because of that statement. Could you please proceed with the account closure?" The branch manager kept apologizing profusely to finally explain the account closure process, almost in tears. "Oh, I almost forgot about something important. There's this troublemaker who hasn't paid rent for the apartment I own for 2 years. I had been letting it slide, thinking he's my son, but no more. I mailed my son a notice demanding 2 years' worth of rent. 3 days later, Sarah's dad and my bonehead son came storming into my house. "Why did you rat me out to the branch manager?" "That was underhanded, Dad. What's the deal with that notice?" "If you're the manager, cover for me," Michael said, fuming. I sighed and replied, "I lost trust in the bank after learning about your practice of judging clients based on education and work history. Are you panicking because of what one person said? Do you have something to hide?" And Michael, "Just because we're family doesn't mean you can skip paying rent. Pay your own rent," Sarah's dad shouted. "Because you stirred the pot, I got a bunch of complaints from my clients. My boss chewed me out because of what you did." The nerve. "Oh no, I didn't stir the pot. I just shared this story casually with my relatives and clients. I didn't tell them to close their accounts," I said with a smile. My son snapped, "What clients, Dad? You're just a deadbeat, aren't you? You think a deadbeat could afford to build a huge house in a prime location and still maintain this lifestyle?" "I even did some renovations recently," I replied. Michael looked baffled. "Huh? What's that? Did you go into debt or something?" I'm really fed up with you. I took a break from my real estate job for a while and then switched to running an online business, which I'm still doing. How many times do I have to tell you I'm not a bum? I said. My son's face turned pale. What? I had no clue. I thought you were just working part-time. Sarah's dad started yelling, You're a real piece of work, keeping your occupation secret even from your own son. Annoyed, I said, Say whatever you want, and closed the front door. Outside, I heard them shouting, You've ruined my reputation. I'm gonna sue you. I can't believe I've been duped by my old man for this long. I'm not gonna let him do this to me. They were making a ruckus, but after about 10 minutes, they seemed to get exhausted and it got quiet. Once they realized that shouting was meaningless, I figured they wouldn't bother coming around again. I let out a sigh of relief and went to make myself a cup of coffee. Just then, I heard my son's voice outside again. You big fat liar. What are you still here for? I said as I looked out the window to see Sarah's dad and my son spray painting my front door. You've got to be kidding me. What are they up to? Just as I was about to go outside and give them a piece of my mind, I heard a police siren getting closer. Could it be that someone in the neighborhood called the cops? My hunch was right. When I went outside, the two of them were being detained by the police who showed up because of a neighbor's complaint. Ah, there he is, that big fat liar. I lost all my credibility at work because of him. They shouted as the police calmly loaded them into the patrol car, saying, all right, we'll take it from here. Then one of the officers, who seemed to have just noticed me, approached with a strangely cheerful expression. Sir, would you please come with us to give your statement? Why me? I thought, but I guess I'm the victim here. I'm gonna spill the beans on all their shenanigans. When we got to the police station, I showed the cops a video from my phone. It was footage from the security camera I installed at my front door, recording all the yelling and antics. What a great piece of evidence, the officer exclaimed with a sparkle in his eye, and my questioning was over in a jiffy. My son and Sarah's dad were given a stern warning by the police and had to sign a restraining order to keep their distance from me. It turns out the whole neighborhood had witnessed their crazy behavior. One of my son's coworkers, who lives nearby, had been blabbering about it at the office. Hey, you won't believe it, but Michael was caught spray painting his own father's house and got hauled off by the cops. I was so shocked that I recorded the whole thing. My son became the talk of the town at his workplace and with clients, and his boss ended up demoting him. I went to report the incident to Bank of America again, where Sarah's dad worked. When I showed the manager the security camera footage on my phone, his face turned white as a sheet. I heard that Sarah's dad finally got fired. Naturally, she called off the engagement with Michael. Both Michael and Sarah's family fled to a rural area. Apparently, Sarah's parents even came to work part-time at the gas station run by my brother. They're no good, my brother said. Couldn't get the hang of stocking shelves no matter how many times I showed them. Had to give them the boot pronto. Word has it that the nearby gas stations and farmers did the same. According to my brother, it seems Sarah's parents can't land a steady job and are bouncing from one gig to another at gas stations and farms. Furthermore, I heard that Sarah showered her boyfriends, including my son, with high-end gifts like watches and was in debt because of that. The little money her parents make from their part-time jobs apparently goes straight into paying off their daughter's debts. It's a mystery how they're making ends meet. It's been 5 years since then, and my son is now 30. It seems like he's changed for the better after being treated with kindness from folks in the small town he moved to. He came to me a couple of times and apologized sincerely. I was naive and immature. I didn't even try to understand your job and just labeled you as a good-for-nothing. I can't apologize enough for how much I regret it. Seeing the change in my son's attitude, I decided to let him move in with me. Now he's working at a company near my place, and little by little, he's helping me out with my work too. But don't get me wrong, he's still wet behind the ears, and I don't trust him completely. I'm hesitant to hand over all my work to him, but I'm going to observe his behavior and attitude towards work and make decisions accordingly. If he proves he's really turned his life around, I might consider handing over the reins of my business. But if I told him that, he might get too excited and say, for real? I'll hand in my 2 weeks' notice tomorrow and do something impulsive. I'm living with my son, holding on to the hope that one day I'll feel confident enough to trust him with everything.